A teacher's blouse is torn in front of 70 laughing students. Phones rise. Laughter echoes through the classroom as she freezes, humiliated, heart pounding. It's her first day. No one steps in. The bullies smirk, proud of their cruelty, but 5 minutes later, those same students would beg for forgiveness. Ms. Margaret was the kind of teacher every student's heart quietly trusted. Late 20s, gentle voice, and eyes that carried both warmth and exhaustion. Her rose-patterned cardigan, neatly folded in her bag, still smelled faintly of home. The safety pin holding her badge had bent from years of reuse, a small detail that said she'd learned to make do. When she called roll, her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of teaching, but from wanting to get it right. She smiled too easily, even when her kindness wasn't returned. During lunch, she'd slip a few coins to a hungry student and brush it off as extra change. No one knew about the red mark on her wrist, a remnant of the morning's shove. She carried herself softly, believing goodness could calm cruelty. But in a room full of restless teens, gentleness was mistaken for weakness. And the Jackson was the kind of student everyone feared and secretly wanted approval from. Tall, loud, with that confident smirk that came from never hearing the word no. His father owned half the town's dealerships, his last name carried weight. He wore that privilege like armor, flashing it whenever someone challenged him. When Ms. Margaret asked him to put his phone away, he leaned back in his chair, grinning. "You don't belong here," he muttered loud enough for the class to hear. The room chuckled, not because it was funny, but because no one dared defy him. He stood, towering over her, circling like a predator testing prey. Then came the shove, sharp, deliberate, humiliating. His friends burst into laughter, recording it for their group chat. To them, this wasn't cruelty. It was entertainment, a power game. And Jackson always made sure he won. Until that day. The sound of fabric tearing cut through the room like a scream. Gasps turned into laughter, and within seconds, a phone camera was aimed straight at Ms. Margaret. One student whispered, "This is going viral." Another added a mocking caption aloud, pretending to type it out. At the back, the teacher's aide froze, eyes darting, but she did nothing. A few teachers peeked through the door, saw the chaos, and quietly stepped back. No one wanted to get involved. Ms. Margaret stood trembling, clutching the torn edge of her blouse, trying to steady her breath. Every second felt like an hour as the camera's red light blinked, proof of her humiliation. Whispers spread down the hallway, lockers clicked open as more students gathered. In their laughter, the sound of cruelty grew louder. What no one knew was that help and reckoning was already on its way. Jackson was still laughing when the classroom door burst open with a thunderous slam that silenced every voice. Standing there was a man in a worn Navy flight jacket, broad shoulders squared, eyes steady, the kind that didn't need to shout to command respect. Ms. Margaret's breath caught. "Dad?" she whispered. He stepped forward, scanning the room with quiet precision, his voice calm but razor-sharp. "Which one of you touched my daughter?" The bullies froze, color draining from their faces. The phone on the smartboard suddenly lit up with an incoming call. Petty Officer K, United States Navy. The intercom crackled. "We've been notified of a disturbance. Security's on its way." Every student who had laughed seconds ago now stood stiff, guilt heavy in the air. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the room, from mockery to fear, from arrogance to shame. By afternoon, the clip was everywhere, reposted, stitched, and shared across every platform. The moment Jackson ripped Ms. Margaret's blouse played on repeat, each replay igniting more outrage. Hashtags like #RespectTeachers, #YouToreHerShirt, and #DisciplineStartsAtHome flooded timelines. Within hours, the school's phone lines were jammed with angry parents demanding answers. Reporters camped outside the gates. The district scrambled to release a statement. Then came the interview. Ms. Margaret's father, a decorated Navy SEAL, stood before cameras in his uniform, his voice steady. Discipline without dignity isn't strength, it's cowardice. The clip went viral again, this time as a message of honor and respect. Journalists uncovered past complaints of student bullying brushed under the rug. Now, the school board couldn't hide. What began as a cruel prank had become a national story, one that would forever change how this town defined respect. The following week, the entire school gathered in the auditorium, a silence heavier than any lecture. Ms. Margaret stood at the podium, no longer trembling. Her blouse was neatly pressed, her voice clear as she read from a small folded letter. "Courage," she said softly, "isn't about fighting back with anger. It's about standing tall when the world tries to make you small." The students listened, eyes lowered, a few brushing away tears. Jackson sat in the front row, suspended but required to attend, his usual smirk replaced with quiet regret. Behind them, her father watched from the last row, arms crossed but proud. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, not for the uniformed man who brought fear, but for the woman who brought grace. As she stepped down, her final words lingered in the air. "They tore my shirt, but they didn't tear me from who I am."